Good morning. Good to be with everyone this morning. Happy Father's Day, as was mentioned already. I may not be the smartest guy on the planet, and I'm not trying to be melodramatic here, but I really do think that we are in an era, and we've been in this era for the past 2 decades only, that 200 to 300 years from now, historians will look back on this time and they will point to 2 dates in particular where everything changed. And you've lived it. The reason I know that is these are the 2 dates. June 27, 2007 and April 3rd, 2010. And not to pick on Apple, I'm saying that if you own a smartphone or a handheld device, these are game changers. They changed everything. And the reason I know that is because in most cases, it takes decades or centuries even to get society to move in a certain direction. But if I were to ask, honestly, stand up if you don't own one of these on some form or some level, right? Most of us would be seated. And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We use it for work. We use it for education. I teach at Valley Christian High School. We have one-to-one iPads. Like, we use these for good or for bad, but we use them nonetheless. And believe me, historians will look back and say, this changed everything. How do I know that? Did you know that since 2009, all of these things have happened? Just since 2009, that's 12 years ago. The Ring doorbell, Netflix streaming, facial recognition, Instagram. We have the way we do finances. All of this. Wireless speakers that I talk to and they do everything for me now. That didn't happen pre-2009, guys. This isn't like generations. This is right here and now. You're a part of history. That last one on the bottom right, or bottom left there, or maybe, yeah, bottom left. That's automated driving, self-automated driving. I took my first self-automated drive about 2 months ago. I wanted to share a little with you. Oh,
Arizona Community Church.
this is it.
Make sure your seatbelt is fastened.
This feels ridiculous.
Press the help button to speak with
2021. We are in a driverless car.
There's the charger. It picked us up like right next to the car. That was unbelievable.
That really was, and the only thing better than this would be if this were between classes. We were doing a segment.
We're recording, yeah. Welcome to Between. We're doing some more
This
STEM
is
stuff.
unreal.
Dude,
Way to go, Waymo. Be the first.
right?
Look at that, even
Look how
turning
it-
right on red.
And it slowed down because it's
And-
got that
yeah.
dip. Oh,
This
whoa.
is absolutely magical.
Look at that.
Futuristically magical.
It like told us it was going to go to the middle. And, oh, look at that. It can see all the cars. There's one right behind us. Did you
It
see
does.
that?
It lines up all the cars through
No way.
some sort of mystical force. And it smells good in here. It
Look at that.
feels good. It's nice and clean.
When that car like barely inched forward, it like knows it. All those spinny things, I think.
We're doing it.
This is out of control.
We're in the future right now. All right, we'll see where we're headed to. Arizona Community Church. So it was a couple months ago, and a buddy of mine got picked up about 5 miles away, and we got into a car. There was no driver. We sat there, and it drove us right here to this parking lot. It dropped us off. We got out. It drove away. And then we had to call an Uber to come get us, to bring us back to our location. It really happened, folks. Like, this is really happening now. And can I just tell you something? As odd as this sounds, because I can't even believe I'm saying it, I felt more safe in the Waymo than in the Uber. No one's driving a car that I felt completely safe in because of all the technology. So again, I'm not saying technology is a bad thing, but it is a game changer. I think we have to admit that. And when you combine it with a postmodern worldview, which is what we're in right now, where we deconstruct at will, we question everything, we affirm the non-existence of truth unless it's my truth, and then you need to subscribe to it. Then what you have, in my opinion, is the absolute perfect storm of a never-ending egocentric culture, a me-centered culture. And that's the world we are in today. We are left to define our own morals, and yet all the while we're swimming in a space that is plagued by life coming at me. In 2008, unless you don't think this is true, Pixar came out with a movie in 2008 called WALL-E. And it's if you have time, watch it. Because in 2008, remember, go back to those 2 days. The iPhone just came out, was just released in 2007. And the iPad hadn't been released yet in 2010. So in 2008, Pixar geniuses got together and they said, let's create a movie where the world is contaminated, we're at the earth, so we have to put people on this ship, and how do they act on this ship? Well, we'll just make it egocentric. We'll make everything for them. So they sit in these chairs and they just move around this ship. They don't ever get up from their chairs and everything comes to them. They're on these screens and they do everything. They talk, they phone people, they play games. Everything's right in front of them and they just move along. That was in 2008. That's happening right now. We're living that. We're living WALL-E right now. That was 12 years ago. So please don't tell me that this isn't a game changer. Of course it is. But when you combine it with a postmodern worldview, then we're left to answer questions like, what motivates me to do anything? What motivates me to get off the couch? What motivates me to do the right thing when no one's looking? What motivates me to think the other person may actually be right? What motivates me to refrain from gloating on social media like everyone else is doing? What motivates me to live the fruit of the Spirit even though I know that's incredibly difficult? What motivates me to serve others, work hard, act with humility, be teachable, listen carefully, speak the truth in love? What motivates me to do those things in an egocentric, handheld technology life that we're living? What motivates me to do any of those? Bill gets up here and teaches every week on all of those things, and we sit and listen to it, and then we go home, and we're swimming upstream in a culture that says you don't have to do any of those things, and you can still live a good life. You can still have everything coming to you in the convenience of your own home. Think what you want to think, be you, do you, explore you, and none of this really has to be applied to your life. And I want to submit to you this morning that perhaps the most profound area that this has impacted, this perfect storm, is the nuclear family. That the way we do marriage today, the way we do parenting, the way we do family time together, all of that has been impacted. Jen and I went out to breakfast. And so again, you may sit here and think, what credibility do you have to speak? I have some Bible knowledge, but guys, I have 5 kids at home, 4 teenagers. I have a freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. Pray for me. And I have a son who just got engaged. Like I got 5 kids. What do you mean, what credibility? And so we go out to breakfast yesterday, and primarily we go out to breakfast to get away from our kids. So we're sitting there, and our breakfast, typically when Jen and I go out to breakfast, we go out to breakfast and we just look at other people's kids because we wonder, how do you do life? How are you doing family? And so right next to us was, in the booth right next to us, there were 3 women, two adult women and a preteenish. And they did exactly what I think an egocentric nuclear families being impacted by this would do. They pulled out their phones, all three of them had phones, and they just sat on them the whole breakfast. Not one word was said. Jen poked me and said, look over there. And I looked, and they didn't say one word to each other. Not one. Not one. Breakfast came, they put their phones down and ate in silence. That's the way families are doing breakfast together now. That didn't happen 15 years ago. Kids are taking a device. You take a 13-year-old right now. And again, hear me, please. Technology is not bad. But you put into the hands of a 13-year-old a device that's a computer, and they go up to the room and shut the door. You have no idea what they're accessing. Do you realize that we don't give... at 13, you can't drive a car. You can't vote. You can't even get a part-time job at 13. But we'll put a computer in your hands, And you can go shut the door and do whatever you want to do and be influenced by whomever you want to be influenced by. And in an egocentric culture, we affirm that. We confirm that. We tell you, be you. Go do that. What do you mean the nuclear family's not being impacted? And the 13-year-old wakes up from reality, or to reality. They come downstairs, and what are mom and dad doing? On their phones. That's the life we're living right now. It has been greatly impacted. And there's no going back. The way we view masculinity, Barna came up with this just recently. They asked Christian men, speaking of Father's Day, men over 35 Christian men and Christian men under 35. The men over 35 said masculinity is threatened, endangered, confused, in crisis and regressing. The men under 35 said it's hopeful, it's thriving, it's vibrant, it's stable, it's progressing. The reason that this matters, folks, is because on Father's Day, listen, I used to be able to go to my dad was at the last service. He's 82 years old. I would go to him when I was a kid, and I could ask him things that he knew about academics, about how to do school, about driving, about how to work. And we were kind of on the same playing field, right? He taught me how to drive a stick shift. Why? Because there were still things called stick shifts. I just showed you a video. There's no driver. I promise you, call me a prophet. In 30 years, my kid's getting married next year, and somebody said, in 3 years, you might be a grandfather. I thought, Lord, help me. I'm not ready to be a grandfather, but that's my reality, right? So his kids, in 30 years, well, maybe his grandkids, they're not going to need licenses. You're not going to need a driver's license. You call up a Waymo, they get there. Why would you need a driver's license? But you think, those of us who have a driver's license, what did a driver's license do for us, right? But help mature the process. At 16, I realized I'm sitting behind a 2-ton vehicle. Kids don't have to do that. So when a kid to 30 years now comes to their parents and says, what was it like to drive? Because I'm not driving, right? So things have changed. If you're a parent right now, you're the last generation, the last one, if you're my age or relatively close to my age, that didn't grow up with 2007, 2010. Every generation afterwards will have been birthed in that. It's a different game we're playing, guys. So when parents are trying to teach their kids right now, clearly the mantra is, you have no idea what I'm going through, and to some degree they're right. In 2007 and 2009, technology just gave us, both parents and kids, this technology and said, there are no instructions, figure it out. And that's what we've been trying to do for the past 12 years. And one of the areas that has been greatly impacted is the nuclear family. So on this Father's Day, the one thing I want to, echo this morning is the title of this message, which is, with all the changes, guess what? There's been no change in the foundation. In other words, when God instituted marriage, he also instituted the family. And 3,000 years ago, he gave us roles and rules to apply to marriage and the family. And those have never, ever changed. Never. And they never will. Even in this me-centered society, God still says there are roles and rules for parents and children today that have always been in play. And today I want to just remind us of a couple of those. So I'm going to talk to 2 groups this morning. If you're not a part of these 2 groups, you can listen in. The first group are the children of fathers, that if you're living in a house where you would be known as one of the children in that house, whatever that age may be, then I want you to lean in and listen to this one thought. Because on Father's Day, hey, you're the best dad on the planet. Do you know why? Because you got the best kids. So I want to address the kids today. And if you're a child today, I just have one thought for you, and that's this. You need to respect respecting. Period. And if you're doing that as a young person, as a young adult, as a teenager, preteen, or as a child, if you're respecting right now, then honestly, you can check out for the next 15 minutes. Because I am convinced that if we do this right, kids, we're golden. And how do I know that? Look at these TV shows. This is going to date some of you because you know these. And then it's going to date some of you because you have no idea what these are. You can mentally play the game of, that's my 3 sons, by the way. It's Andy Griffith. And for the young people in the room, your parents and grandparents would actually watch these, not reruns. They did watch them like when they on the live, Wednesday nights or Saturdays or... It's bringing back some great memories here. Now, I show these to you because I want you to know one thing. In all of those shows, anecdotally, I'll give you that the one thing that all those shows, different socioeconomic shows, different shows on diversity, different shows on race, different shows on gender, but they all had one thing in common, and that was respect. In other words, many of those shows, the plot line was when a kid veered off that path of respect, right? And the whole show, humorous or serious, was to get the kid back on the path of respect. That was the whole show. And can I just be honest with you? Most of those shows weren't Christian shows. It was just that was the culture. The culture was, if you grew up and you were a child, you respected mom and dad, period. There's no question about that. And in fact, you didn't even really need the Bible to tell you that. You just knew from societal issues that you respected mom and dad. And so all of those shows that I can think of was about, the funny things and about the family and whatnot. But at the end of the day, the show wrapped up with, no, we're back on track. There's a healthy, right relationship in our family, no matter how unique our family is. I was talking to someone after the service last night, and they said, man, I'm really struggling with this, Greg, because, you don't know my family. And I said, I don't need to know your family, because these roles and rules apply to all of us. I said, you want to go toe-to-toe? My kids told me the other day we should set up cameras in our house, because our house is a reality show. It's so chaotic. They said, you want to make some money, Dad? I said, sure. Set up cameras in the house. Let people tune in. It's hard to do family today. So I hear you and I empathize with you, but I'm telling the kids today, if you want to do life well, respect respecting. Here are the verses that support that. In Ephesians chapter 6, Paul says, children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother. This is the first commandment with a promise, that it may go well with you and that you may live long in the land. Colossians chapter 3, children, obey your parents in everything. And by the way, Paul wasn't being exaggerative there. He really meant everything. Not some things, not kind of, not when you feel like it, not when they get you, not when you're feeling good about it. In everything, kids, obey your parents. And watch this, it's pleasing to the Lord. Watch the implication. The inference is, if you're not obeying your parents in everything, guess what? It's to the Lord, not pleasing. In fact, do you know that word obey there? It's a fascinating word. In fact, in Matthew, it's used. And in Matthew, where it's used is in Matthew 8, I believe. Yep. In Matthew 8, I thought it was 8. It's where Jesus is calming the storm at Matthew 8:27. And Jesus is calming the storm. He's asleep. The disciples are freaking out. Storms are blowing. The wind's blowing. And Jesus gets up from his sleep and he just calms the wind. He says, calm, obey. And in fact, in Matthew 8:27, here's what it says. And the people said, who is this that even the winds and the seas obey him? Same word as Paul. So Paul pulls from Matthew and he says, I want to teach kids some things today. What do I want them to do? I want them to obey their father and mother like the winds and the sea obeyed Jesus. Now, ask yourself, how did the winds and the seas obey Jesus? Jesus says to the winds and the seas, calm down. And the winds and the seas say, on your third time we'll do it, Jesus. Because we never do it on the first and second. Jesus calms the winds and the seas says, well, you don't get us. Jesus wants to calm the winds and the winds and the seas says, I'll do it when I feel like it. Jesus wants to calm the winds and the winds and the seas says, let's talk about that. I don't see that, guys. What I see is Jesus said, calm down, and they did when? Immediately. First time, without question. And then Paul says, hey, kids, obey mom and dad. Implication, first time, without question. Exodus chapter 21. Honor your father and mother so that your days may be prolonged and that on the land which the Lord gives you. In Proverbs, listen, my son, to a father's instructions. Listen, my son, to your father's instructions. My son, don't forget my teaching. My son, pay attention to what I say. My son, keep your father's commands. Listen to what your father says who fathered you. Now, young people, listen, I want to come close to you today and just tell you this. Do we need to respect everyone? Absolutely. Do we need peace at everyone? Absolutely. But if you were to ask me, Greg, go through Proverbs and show me all the verses where it says, parents, listen to your kids' teachings. Parents, listen to your son's instructions. Parents, keep your son's commands. I can't find any. It doesn't go both ways, kids. It goes one way. Listen to your parents' instructions. Follow your parents' commands. That's the instructions we're given in the Bible. Listen to this out of Deuteronomy. If a man has a stubborn and rebellious son who will not obey the voice of the father, the voice of his mother, right? 3,000 years ago, Moses was dealing with this. And though they discipline him, he still won't listen. They're trying. The parents are trying to instruct this kid. The kid's being stubborn and rebellious. The parents say, okay, now there's discipline involved. The kid says, no, I don't think so. The father or his mother shall take hold of him, bring him out to the elders of the city gate, and place the place where he lives, and they shall say to the elders. Now, I cut that verse off right there because let's play the option game. Parents take the kid out. The kid's stubborn and rebellious. He will not obey. He won't listen to them. And the parents bring him to the elders of the city gate. Option A, what do the elders of the city gates do? Option A is they say, well, listen, mom and dad, you just don't know your kid. You need to reason with your kid. You need to understand your kid. It's a tough life. You need to appreciate the fact that, kids are kids. Like that's option A, right? The elders could have said that. Here's what Deuteronomy finishes with. This is our son, stubborn and rebellious. He won't obey our voice. He's a glutton and drunkard, right? Egocentric, me-centered. Then all the men of the city shall stone him to death. So you shall purge the evil from your midst, and all Israel shall hear and fear. I didn't write this, guys. The Bible. It's Deuteronomy. Now, I want to be clear. We're not applying the Mosaic law by way of applying the results of the Mosaic law. But God forbid we should ever disregard the principle of the Mosaic law. And the principle right here is, young person, if you are being stubborn and rebellious, if your parents are trying to discipline you and you're giving them the cold shoulder, God is calling that evil. He's not telling you to negotiate. He's not telling you to wake up from your iPad or your iPhone and say, maybe I'll listen to you if I want to. See, an egocentric culture is saying, you be you, you explore you do you the way you want to do it, and if it disagrees with mom or dad, then that's their problem. And I'm telling you, that's not biblical. In fact, in Exodus 21:15, it says, whoever strikes his father and mother be put to death. Anyone who curses his father and mother shall be put to death. Proverbs 30, there's a kind of person who curses his father, doesn't bless his mother. The eye that mocks a father and scorns a mother, the ravens of the valley will pick it out and the young eagles will eat it. So what I'm coming along close to you, young person today, and I'm saying, man, if you could do one thing, it's do this right, respecting. This person I was talking to last night, they said, here's the problem, Greg, is that when you say that, you have no idea how difficult it is because of how ungodly my parents are. I get that. I really do. And I want to empathize with that. And I will address that in just a moment. So I want to be clear. We go to Romania every year, and it's a Greek Orthodox culture. And a lot of people who become Christians over there, a lot of young people becoming Christians, their parents refuse for them to go to church. Like they demand they cannot go to like this, evangelical cult church. So I get it. If you're in a position where you're trying to honor mom and dad, you're trying to respect mom and dad, but they are doing things that are ungodly or unbiblical, then we can address that. But I would put that as the asterisk. I teach 18-year-olds all day. I've got 5 teenagers at home. I promise you, most of the times when my kids are disrespectful, it's because they're sinners. It's because they have a sin nature. They want to be disrespectful. And probably you're in the same boat. It's because they're given all this stuff and saying, you be you and you do you. And when mom and dad challenge that, when they discipline you or want to discipline you, you can buck up. And I'm telling you, the best position you can take is to respecting. You want to make your father proud today? Respecting. In fact, Proverbs 1 says, listen to your father's instructions. Don't ignore your mother's teachings, for they are a graceful wreath for your head and a necklace for your neck. In other words, back in the day, what Solomon was saying is, as a young person, you want to make your parents proud? Adorn their wisdom. Wear it like a wreath and a necklace. Go to your friends and your classmates and your club sports and just talk about the way your parents are instructing you. Wear it like you would wear your most pride jewelry. That's the way it was always meant to be. Which leaves me with an interesting question then, which is, do the parents have to respect anything? And the answer is yes. See, all of these things right here, government, elderly, spouses, employers, church leaders, authorities, parents, we're all called to respect those areas. And adults in the room, can I just tell you, what the kids are telling me is, Tonk, they call me Tonk, they say, Tonk, what I want to do is respect my mom and dad, but if you're telling me mom and dad have to respect the government, I don't see them doing that. You respect them, each other, their spouse, I don't see them doing that. Respect their employers, all they do is come home and gripe, right? And so I'm telling the adults, you want your kids to respect you? Here's one way. Respect the things that God's telling you to respect. And are we doing that? Because I promise you, if we're both doing the respecting, this is going to come a lot easier. Kids are going to look upward and say, he's not the funniest guy on the planet. He's not the greatest looking guy on the planet. But I respect him. And when you have a house that is full of respect, it is a good house. So to the dads today, I want to get through that. To the dads today, I would just say this. What's on my side, Greg? Here's what's on your side. If I'm telling the kids today, respecting, dads, uncles, grandparents today, I'm telling you, model the metaphor. We got to play both games here, right? So to the dads here, the men in the room, I would just say model the metaphor. What do I mean by that? Well, in 1 Thessalonians chapter 2, it's up here. Here's what Paul says. He says, you are witnesses and so is God, how devoutly and uprightly and blamelessly we behave towards you believers. And just as you know, we were exhorting and encouraging, imploring each one of you as a father would his own children, so that you may walk in a manner worthy of the God who calls you into his own kingdom and glory. So what do I mean by modeling the metaphor? Here's what I mean. You see this word here? Right now, so Paul is using a metaphor where he's saying this is the way we dealt with the church, but it's like a father dealing with his kids. So that's why I'm addressing it to the dads today. Now, for you English people in the room who like the language, you look at that word as, and you know enough about English 10 to know enough when you use a word, use two comparisons and use like or as, it's not a metaphor, it's a what? It's a simile. And that's true unless you're married to an English teacher, which I am. So I went to Jennifer and I said, metaphor or simile? Here's what she said. She said, the phrase is an adverb phrase modifying exhorted, therefore it's a metaphor. Now, I don't know what that means. All I know is it's a metaphor. And if you don't like it, she's sitting right there. You can talk to her after the service. So gentlemen, we need to model the metaphor. What does that mean? It simply means this. The job has to get done with you. Okay? Yes, your wife, but it's got to get done with you. Yes, your coworkers or friends, but it's got to get done with you, men. What does that mean? It means what Paul was saying here. You are witnesses, and so is God, of how devoutly and rightly and blamelessly we behave towards you believers. So, gentlemen, I just have a question for you this morning, and that is, are you acting that way toward your kids? You want your kids to respect you? I'm telling the kids, as a role of a child, respect your dads, and they're telling me, it's a lot easier when my dad's acting like this, Greg. Heck of a lot easier when my dad's acting like this. And I would wholeheartedly agree. Devoutly, rightly, and blamelessly. And before you think there's no way I could do that because that's like perfection, listen to this. The thieves were on the cross. Jesus is dying. Two thieves are around him. And one says, hey, if you're the Son of God, get off the cross, and take us off too. And the other one says, and we indeed are suffering justly, for we are receiving what we deserve for our deeds. But this man, he's done nothing wrong. And Paul is taking his cue from that phrase, which is that's how we want dads to act. We want you to be blameless and devout and upright. Perfect? Absolutely not. But you've got to show some effort here, guys. I've got to show some effort. I can't just lord this over my kids and say, I can act however I want, and you have to respect that. That's not biblical, gentlemen. What's biblical, and by the way, this person I was talking to last night, I said, here's the great upside, guys. I'm giving you 10 years head start. What do you mean by that? When you have a kid, typically the first 10 years, the kid's just being a kid. They're picking up things along the way and whatnot. But right around that 10, 11, 12-year-old mark, they start looking at you and evaluating what kind of a person are you. And if you've spent the past 10 years, the first 10 years of their life doing that, the best you possibly can, then I go to this kid when they come to my classroom and say, do you respect your dad? That's a no-brainer. Of course they do. He's not, he's got some flaws and blind spots and whatnot, but do I respect him? 100%. Well, how do I do that practically? I would offer this to all the men in the room as a life verse, quite honestly. 1 Corinthians chapter 16, verses 13 and 14. Be on the alert. What does that mean? Well, honestly, it's the same word actually in 1 Peter chapter 5, where Peter says, be of sober spirit, be on the alert. Why? Your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking to die. In other words, Peter says, be proactive. Stand at your family's gate. Stand at the city gate. Stand at your work's gate, and don't let the devil in. Stand strong, men. Stand in the gap and say, you're not going to impact my family. And again, when I talk about handheld technology and whatnot, you don't think that's an entryway for the devil to do his bidding? You need to take control of that, gentlemen, by way of understanding, what am I providing my kids? Because your kids don't know any better to say to you, but everyone else has it. Everyone else wants it. I want it. She's got it. He's got it. I'm the oddball out if I don't have it. And I don't disagree with that. But if it's going to do more damage than good because you're not willing to spend the time to invest in them on how to manage that kind of stuff, then are you being on alert? The second thing is, he says, stand firm in the faith. Bill just got done with 8 weeks of where to draw the line. Gentlemen, we need you to step in the gap and draw the line with your families. This is what we're going to believe as a family. I'm standing firm in the faith, which means that I'm practicing whatever it is God's teaching me here at ACC or elsewhere. Then he says, act like men. You know that word actually, act like men, just so we're clear? In Luke chapter 2, Luke says this, now the child, meaning Jesus, continued to grow and become strong, increasing in wisdom, favor of God was upon him. You know that word become strong is the same word. It doesn't mean, please hear me, it doesn't mean I have to own a 4x4 and my dog's name is Cujo. Like, it doesn't mean that. It simply means that I'm maturing in my faith. That Jesus matured, increased in wisdom, and gentlemen, we need to be about that business. That when my child sees me in their formative years, until they leave my house, they've seen me grow in wisdom. And can I just say, gentlemen, you don't have to be a seminary graduate to grow in wisdom. You just need to grow. My oldest son got engaged the other day. He calls me up and he says, hey, I'm getting engaged, and so how do I tell her parents? Like, I want their blessing. So, I'm going to shoot my shot. And I said, well, tell them you love her. And he said, I'm going to do that. Anything else? And I said, you know what? Tell them that you're going to provide and protect her. Because I had heard that years ago. I can't even tell you where I heard that from. But it sounds pretty good. Alliteration, the whole thing. So he calls me up right after and he says, I talked to him. I said, really? What'd they say? And he said, oh, they're all for it. He said, but I'm kind of mad. I said, sounds good to me. He said, what are you mad at? He said, well, I was driving home and I talked to the mom, and when I was proposing to them for her, the mom started crying. So I got through, and she said, oh my gosh, Caden, of course you can have our daughter's hand in marriage. And he's like, well, why are you crying? And she said, I was just so moved by what you had to say. And she said, particularly when you said you're going to provide and protect for my daughter. And I said, well, that's beautiful. Why are you upset? He said, because you said that. I wasn't an original. See, that's what it's all about, guys, is that you don't have to be this great, you just have to live and impart your wisdom to your kids. So the first thing is I'm getting the job done with myself, but the second thing is I'm getting the job done with my kids. See, Paul says that, and I'm just not devoutly upright and blamelessly, but he says this, just as you know, we are exhorting and encouraging and imploring each one of you as a father would his own kid. That's what Paul is doing to the church of Thessalonica as a father would his own kid. Now, the implication is that you're doing that with your own children. Are you exhorting, imploring, and encouraging your own kids? And so how do you do that? Just two quick ways. I'm teaching them. I'm their primary teacher, not school, and dare I say, not even the church, that I'm their primary teacher about the Word of God. And I'm doing that through my experience, through my words, through my actions. And then the second thing, and again, Jen always asks me, like, how do you know if you preached a good message? I said, if no one leaves, that's my indication. Like, I set the bar low. And this may cause some of you to leave, but guys, we need to get back into discipline and correction. That I think we're living in an age today where we are afraid to discipline and correct our kids. And if you think having a conversation with your kids, like, well, what do you think about? That's not disciplining and correcting your kid. That's negotiating. Same breakfast yesterday, and after we got done with the ladies, I turned over here, 2 boys and a dad. 10, 12-year-old boys and a dad. And Dad was sitting right there. Kid got pancakes. He took his syrup bottle, and it has one of those pour spouts, like an alcoholic bottle, like a pour spout, and he just did this, right? Okay? So I watched. And he wouldn't put it down. So now I mentally clocked him, which means I started counting how long he's doing this. He did it 3 separate times in the span of 3 minutes. In 3 minutes, he picked that bottle up and dumped it on his pancakes 3 separate times. Cumulatively, he put 47 seconds worth of syrup on his pancakes. Now, you want to do something on the way home? Hold your hand like this and count to 47. And you tell me how much syrup is going on your pancakes. And I'm watching the dad who's sitting there eating. And Jen said, don't get up. Don't get up. Because I wanted to say to the dad, come on, man. Every kid likes sugar. But that's not helping your kid. What are you doing here? And we're seeing that over and over and over again. And I promise you guys, as we kind of wrap up today, I just know that if I went over there, the dad would have said, who are you? So I'm telling you right now, dads, go invest in your kids' lives. How do I do that well? I do it by doing it in love. Remember back here, I just want to show this real quick, right here. All that you do in love. That's the big thing that kids are lacking today, gentlemen. I don't know if my dad loves me. He doesn't really say it. I don't know. Show them that you love them. But part of loving them is correcting them. That's a part of the love package. What's it all for as we wrap up? It's all for this. So that you would walk in a manner worthy of the God who calls you into his own kingdom. It's not for you. It's not that you become father of the year, grandfather of the year. It's so that your kids walk with Jesus. Period. You want to have a legacy that goes on? It's this. Elizabeth Elliot once said, don't dig up in doubt what you planted in faith. Plant in faith that what you do is good enough. So I want to leave you with this. You say to me after you've listened to all of that, Greg, listen, I've done that. I appreciate your words, but I'm doing the best I can. Or you're over here and you're a kid and you say, Greg, I am respecting the best I can, and it's not working. Ezekiel chapter 18 says this, a son will not suffer the punishment for his father's guilt, nor will a father suffer the punishment of his son's guilt. The righteousness of the righteous will be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked will be upon himself. In other words, the last point is, all I'm asking us to do today is our jobs. That's it. If you're a young person, do your job. Respecting. If you're a father, grandfather, uncle, father figure, do your job. Get the job done with yourself and get the job done with your kids. If you do that, you can lay your head on your pillow and trust God that he's in control. So 3 questions as we wrap up. Number 1, to the young people. Do I need to have a reframing of how I view the family I'm a part of? That in a culture of me-centered, egocentric, do I need to have a reframing based on those passages I just shared of how I view the family I'm a part of? Number 2, to the fathers, is the job getting done with me? Am I modeling the metaphor so that my kids are respecting me, and when they do, it's a no-brainer for them? And then number 3, is the job getting done with my kids? Am I doing everything in my power to point them in the direction of Jesus? We need to change the culture, folks. And I'm convinced the way it's going to change is in the nuclear family. Let's pray. Father, thank you for today. And God, I thank you for the men in this room that are trying to fight the good fight. I'm the first to admit it is sometimes a losing battle. But God, I would pray that you would shore them up with their spouses, with friends, with family. I know this church reaches out to men through Mike Grimm and the men's ministry. God, I pray that you would allow them a space where they could lock arms with other men and run this race together. I pray, Father, that the blind spots would be exposed and they'd be man enough to admit it, so that our kids would walk with you, Jesus. That would be my hope. And to the children in the room, Father, I do pray that you would give them the strength to fight this fight, to swim upstream and respect their parents even if their friends aren't. God, I pray for everyone in the room that we would hold fast to the Word of God. And in a culture that's swimming against that thought, that we would stand in the gap and represent you well. And to that end, Father, we will give you the glory, and we pray for your return in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, thanks for coming today. Dad's root beer on me today, so go grab yourself some. We'll see you next week.